Hey everybody, welcome to Travel Tuesday, part of the Beard Bros Media Network at the intersection of culture and industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth, creator of the Cannabis Trail and the founder of Applegarth Strategies, an agency specialized in the cannabis travel audience and the tourism economy, specifically growth strategies for destinations, lounges, and brands. Whether you're a seasoned cannabis professional or just starting out, you're sure to find something of value here on Travel Tuesday and the Beard Bros Media Network. So let's get started. For this Travel Tuesday podcast episode, I'm interviewing John Casali, founder of Huckleberry Hill Farms, as we dive into the heart of Southern Humboldt, a cultural capital and craft place of source destination for cannabis. Johnny, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for having me. And I look forward to talking with you. Been a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give a little brief bio about Johnny and his work. So Johnny's a legendary cannabis cultivator. He's also a cultural tourism leader and a pioneer of cannabis heritage preservation. As the founder of Huckleberry Hill Farm, he created the world's very first cannabis tourism farm, a model that continues to inspire craft growers and tourism advocates globally. It's a model that everybody's looking to. His farm is also the first ever cultural landmark on the Cannabis Trail, a testament to the legacy of Southern Humboldt County and a cultural capital, and again, a place of source destination for California's award-winning cannabis scene. Johnny's work has been instrumental in preserving and educating about the importance of seed banks, breeding projects, and legacy cannabis genetics. So Johnny, anything you want to add to the intro that I missed?
No, I mean, there's a lot to cover, and so those were kind of the main points. And wherever it takes us from here, let's go.
Awesome. All right, well, let's talk about the fact that you are a trailblazer in cannabis tourism. You were the very first cannabis tourism farm in the world. Can you take us back to how that started and what inspired you to open up your farm to visitors? Why that was important to you?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's actually the thing that means more to us than anything else. And when I say us, I'm talking about my partner, Rose, and I. I had been growing cannabis for over 50 years now, 48 years now, and really learned everything I knew from my mom. And I really wanted this farm to be different, right? When I decided to go legal, I didn't want it to be the row-cropped money-making machines that so many people understand cannabis farming to be like. And I wanted it to be different. And I wanted it to have the ability to tell the story of this small legacy Emerald Triangle farmer that really built a billion-dollar industry. And so it wasn't right off the bat when I got into the tourism part. Every county, every city in every county has their different rules and different regulations, and Humboldt County wasn't as easy as some of the other counties. And it took me about a year and a half before I was actually able to retain a tourism license, which allowed me to take the public into my cultivation site and walk them around and tell them stories. And I started off with a few people and was really unsure, right? Because I'm not a public speaker. I've been a farmer my whole life. I'm kind of shy in sense of kind of gotten a little bit better over the years. But I started telling these stories to these people that maybe had never been to a cannabis farm before, and maybe only were going to be here at my farm for an hour or two. And just watching their facial responses and their reactions to some of the stories, especially one in particular about a lady that had come here that had cancer and really were trying our genetics for the medicinal values that they had in them. And, those stories resonated with some of those guests that we had, and watching them get very emotional and even crying a lot of times on the side of the hillside really had a profound effect on both Rose and I, and kind of just really was an easy decision that this is our pathway forward. This is how we can really make a difference in people's lives. And it's never been about just Huckleberry Hill Farms. It gave us the platform really to share the story of these small, amazing farmers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and let's talk about that for a second, because, travel is interesting because there's medical travel, there's leisure travel, and there's this wellness travel. And cannabis really does span across all three, from an industry level to like a connoisseur level, or a consumer level, or a travel audience level. You mentioned that this story about this cancer patient. When you look at the genetics, can you tell us a little bit about the genetics that exist in Humboldt, which I've heard referenced as the Amazon of genetics, and what that means for medical tourism, in your opinion?
Having grown up here in Humboldt County, growing cannabis was presented to me kind of differently, I think, than a lot of people really truly understand what this plant is. And my mom had always taught me that, this plant had all these medicinal values, and that it had this ability to cure some ailments that, because it was federally illegal, really haven't been closely looked on and discovered. But in our pathway forward, got connected with Columbia University, and really figured out through their testing facility over there that whitethorn rose in particular, one of our staple strains here, had over 60 different terpenes and over 444 different cannabinoids. And it's an evolving study that they continue to do, growing some of these strains indoor, outdoor, mixed light. And he's working on these projects more than I even know, and really got a text from him the other day saying that a couple of these genetics that we have here, he found had the ability to reproduce neurons in the brain. And so he was super excited, which I pretended to understand a little bit about what he was talking with. But as the Amazon jungle of genetics, Humboldt County and the Emerald Triangle, there's all kinds of legacy genetics that have this ability. And my biggest fear with the struggles of the small farmer, and seeing a lot of my friends go away, those genetics from certain farms will also go away when they don't participate anymore. So that's my biggest fear, is that we might miss an opportunity of discovering something in some of these legacy genetics that has the ability to cure cancer. And we want to participate as much as we can, and educating people that in the tourism aspect of it is, I always want to tell them the most important thing to truly understand is knowing your farmer and knowing how they're cultivating your cannabis and the product that you're about to put in your body. And really truly to understand that what makes me feel good might not make you feel good. We're all made up differently, or into a cannabinoid system, and you have to truly experiment around and discover for yourself what terpenes and what cannabinoids makes you feel amazing, or what relieves some certain ailment that you might be experiencing. And so really look forward to participating in that way. It feels like in a small little way, every time I have a tour, I'm making a difference in changing people's opinion of what we've been doing here for the last 50 years.
Yeah. So if I heard you correctly, I mean, whitethorn rose alone, per the study with Columbia, you're looking at 500 different therapeutic chemical compounds that, unpacking that one specific cultivar, that one varietal, is a toolbox of what do these 450 to 500 different therapeutic compounds offer when it comes to health and wellness. Did I understand that correctly?
You did. And unfortunately for a lot of the farms in California, the state requires these labs to only test for a certain amount of terpenes and a certain amount of cannabinoids. So it wasn't until Columbia did those studies that I even realized that whitethorn rose had these other terpenes. And one of the most prevalent terpenes in whitethorn rose, selenodiene, is one that they don't even test for here. So
Right.
like whitethorn rose always shows on their lab report, the COA test, 1.2% terpenes. But if you smell it or if you experience, that's completely wrong. And with Columbia University, it was more like 5 or 6% terpenes, with all these other added terpenes that we didn't even know had it in it with California. So
Wow.
will evolve, but it's my understanding, talking to labs, trying to encourage them to have more standards to figure out what terpenes are prevalent in certain strains. Is it's $20,000 basically per standard. So if you're testing for 444 different cannabinoids, you can do the math if it's 20,000 a test. So
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
yeah.
it seems like I mean, it's just stating the obvious, money and resources and control and growth aside, being able to unpack everything that nature has provided to really understand what exists. And it seems like an obvious, I mean, correct path to go forward as if we can do that. Do you think there's a future? So when I think of ag tourism, obviously people go to watch the grapes get picked and they look at crush and harvest as a whole thing. And I think the easy layup is totally for cannabis too, the harvest season. But when it comes to the medicinal side, I think often about, is there a strategy with tourism that is absolutely based in wellness, well-being, and medical travel, where you have a customer or a patient come visit the farm every year, actually imprint on the seed with saliva, with that old kind of hippie legend that there's a communication that happens between human and plant when you do that. And then you plant a dedicated plant for that person every year. And after harvest, you come pick up your medicine box for the next year, in December or where. Do you think that there's a possibility that it could go in that direction?
Yeah, I think that's down the road, but that's always been my vision, right? Like to already have all the plants sold on the farm, right? A lot of them are in their individual planter boxes, and they currently have names of people in my life or Rose's life that made it possible for me to be here. It's part of the story. But it would be amazing to find a cultivar, whether not it be whitethorn rose or mom's weed or Amalfi, that some customer found that could cure some ailment they had, and that nameplate, whoever that customer would be on that planter box, and it would be theirs, and at harvest they could come and help me harvest it, and that would be designated to them, and I could at that point sell that plant to them that has that ability with those terpene profiles or those cannabinoid profiles to cure their ailment. That would be the goal. And it sounds like it's doable and it's simple and it's easy. It's all the hurdles in between that amazing outcome to the county rules and regulations and the state rules and regulations and the city's rules and regulations. After having struggled just to be permitted and to overcome all the hurdles, a lot of the wind is out of small farmer sails, and to try to address that right now when we're really addressing just surviving is a tough one. But yeah, that's my ultimate goal, and I'm going to get a second or a 10th wind here, and hopefully pick up on that and try to pursue something like that, because that's my direct to consumer in that model that you talked about, where all the plants are already sold, and I can take people on a virtual tour, through my phone or through a live Instagram, and show them their plant as it's growing. That sounds exciting and fun for me.
Yeah. I mean, and to tie this back into data, like the cannabis travel audience, right? 72 million Americans today, 24% don't consider themselves cannabis consumers, but they love culture. And that data point all about wellness and well-being continually rises to the top. And I think I look at the average spend per year is between 3,500 and 4K on travel. But these people pick destinations based on cannabis experiences. And the idea of, $2,500 of that travel budget going to having your own plant, your own impression on that plant or imprint on that plant, knowing your source, knowing your grower and the human energy that's being invested, and then going up there twice a year for planting season and to pick up your medicine kit, and then doing that annually. I feel like that's such an opportunity for the craft sun-grown farmers that really do love the plant, and that the people that understand what that means when it comes to quality. Having that.
And I think you touched on something really important, is the human investment that we put into each and every plant, right? We don't really per se have a traditional SOP we call it more of a TLC, where we give this tender loving care to each plant and each different cultivar, because what we've learned over the last 40 years is that every different cultivar needs its own individual attention. You can't just say, okay, it's Wednesday and I'm pouring this jug of whatever in the tank and I'm fertilizing it like that. We kind of have built a relationship with those different cultivars over decades, and we kind of know how they react. Some years, it's a little different than others depending on the weather. But we kind of can sit back from below the farm and look up onto the hillside and see when one's maybe suffering or needs a little more attention or might need to be fed. And those inputs that we're putting into those plants are really derived from the surrounding forest around us. So eventually, at the end of the day, instead of tasting like Athena or advanced nutrients or something that comes out of a jug, it tastes like the surrounding area, and it's the taste of the place that I think really resonates with people.
Right. Which is a great segue, because that is all about tourism, is placemaking, local craft, local terroir, local inputs. So let's talk about cultural travel. Tying this back into that audience data, the cannabis travel audience. I had a conversation last week with someone. Well, who's the 24% that don't consider themselves consumers, but they're cannabis travelers? It's people that love culture and craft and can appreciate different lifestyles, right? It's not brain surgery. People go to visit a coffee farm in Kona in Hawaii, but they don't drink coffee. They go look at the vineyards in Napa, but they don't drink wine. It's people that want to go visit a different culture and through agriculture and the craft, which is part of that culture. And there's this term in travel called a place of source region, where the craft permeates throughout the community. And for Southern Humboldt, that is cannabis. And Huckleberry Hill was the very first cultural landmark on the cannabis trail. Can you tell us a little bit about the culture of Southern Humboldt and why it is such a special destination today for visiting and having a California cannabis experience?
Yeah, I really love that question. And I get asked that question quite a bit, because most people think my response would be because we grow the world's best cannabis. But really, that's just a very small part of what makes Southern Humboldt or Humboldt County or the Emerald Triangle so amazingly special. But truly, what's the bigger part of it is this community and the feeling that you get when you come here. Because as much as I tell you how magical it is, it's only when you come here and experience it for yourself, somebody from the outside, that you understand truly what I'm saying, that these people that have been growing cannabis for decades and decades and decades and really have supported their lifestyle and have given back to the community, have built the schools in the hills and the technical rescue teams and the volunteer fire departments, really was a community that relied on one another with their lives when it came to law enforcement and aerial surveillance and eradication. And we became very close, and that closeness feels very safe. And that safety and that closeness really is portrayed when visitors come and see our farms and they talk to other people along the journey. And that's really the most magical place of the Emerald Triangle, and especially Southern Humboldt, because we had at one time really the most to lose and felt like we were kind of getting picked upon when there was something called the war on drugs and federal eradication and all that kind of stuff. When you get scared or when a traumatic event happens, it really brings the community very close together, like we saw what happened down in LA with the Palisade fires. As unfortunate as that situation is, it does something to a really close knit community, and it brings you hopefully closer together, like it has done for Southern Humboldt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, when I think of it in a tourism lens too, well, first off, it's beautiful. And you can feel that. I mean, when I was in Mendocino and Humboldt and Trinity have this different vibration, and there's this love that is woven into the community because of the experience of life under Prohibition. And that exact same thing happened with alcohol. And today you have bootlegger tunnels, and there's a whole tourism vertical that tells that story, which has sensitivities. You have to approach it, especially because it's so new. Any visitor has to come respectfully and be able to listen and understand what the sound of a helicopter means to a community that was terrorized essentially during the war on drugs. And that's part of the beauty, I think, in the authenticity and this and what makes it unique and very special. Last thing I want, and this is going to be going to a question. I always really associate, yes, cannabis it's a cultural capital, but it goes beyond cannabis. I often think too of the Back to the Land movement as a huge part of that cultural fabric. That of course cannabis was part of that, but it really is about relationship to nature, the art of intentional communities and care and having integrity about how you show up. Can you speak a little bit to the Back to the Land movement and how that's integrated into this self-reliant, special, community-driven culture of Southern Humboldt?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's really the reason why we moved here, was to really create a lifestyle of our own. I moved here when I was 5 years old with my mom and my stepdad. After my dad had moved here several years ago out to Honeydew, where he bought 52 acres along the Mattole Valley, out of a magazine that was kind of advertised by Bob McKee, who's over here at Whitethorn Construction. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he really left a legacy that will be remembered forever, and he's really one of my heroes. Where was I going with that? I was going with so we were really trying to create a life of our own. We grew our a lot of our food in the vegetable garden, and my stepdad was a part-time hunter. We were commercial fishermen, and we just wanted to create a life of our own. We didn't want to be in the rat race down in the city, stuck in traffic, the 9 to 5, which is okay for some people. That's just not how we chose. We wanted to build our life. We wanted to do it how we wanted to. And cannabis was at that time just a small part of the income that got us to the next year. The goal for us every single year, and most of my neighbors, was to make enough money to get to the next year. So there was times where we cut firewood, commercial fish, we were part-time loggers. We did all kinds of things just to scrap and make it to the next year. And just back a little bit, what brought this community so close together, in some unfortunate times where maybe we were eradicated or that small part of our income got taken by enforcement, this community really rallied with their neighbors and helped them out, whether or not it was bringing them food or giving them a little bit of money to get to the next year. We really relied on each other like a big family, and it made this place really super magical. And there wasn't many people I knew that didn't grow cannabis, and most of them were never in it for the money. They just wanted to live their lives how they wanted to live it and build a life of their own.
Right. Yeah. And Whitethorn Construction and Bob McKee. For those of you listening to this podcast, we'll put some link outs in the show notes to a deeper story with Johnny and with Bob about the kind of the cultural landmark along the Cannabis Trail, and a bit more storytelling behind these two pioneers of that. So Johnny, what's your take on the future of cannabis tourism? Where do you see Southern Humboldt living, and the Emerald Triangle and the Humboldt brand? And how vital do you think tourism is to uplifting the region, as well as the brands and the operators and cultivators that are in this region?
That's a big question. Well, the cannabis industry is so flooded right now that a lot of the small farmers are really struggling, right? Half the doors in Garberville are closed currently. Actually, most of the towns and counties from the Oregon border all the way down to San Francisco are feeling the effects of the oversaturation of the market. So I always like to look at the industry as like a big puzzle on the table, and how do we put these pieces to the puzzle together? Because I know it can be done, right? We have something amazing. We have an amazing story. We have amazing cannabis. It's an amazing, beautiful place with redwoods and rivers and creeks and oceans and unpopulated beaches. And tourism, in my opinion, and part of the reason I got a tourism license early, was to tell our story, but it's a great way to um, really educate people about Humboldt cannabis, right? You go anywhere in the world and you say Humboldt, the first thing they think of is cannabis. And, it's the first time in our lives where we've been able to take tours and really share the history of Humboldt County and tell stories about this plant and why we live here. And unfortunately, that downturn in the marketplace has really put a damper on like the Humboldt County itself and the way it operates. They can barely take care of their roads. And, we were hoping that the supervisors of Humboldt County would get behind tourism because I don't know the exact numbers, but right over the hill from me, 15 minutes away, there's something called the Lost Coast Trail. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of tourists that go out there to walk on this trail. I know they would want to come to a farm that displays images of 20, 30, 40 other farmers and tell stories of other farmers. They'll want to come here. So the pieces to the puzzle really has looked more to the cannabis trail to help develop something that either we don't have the ability to or haven't put the energy into because we're growing cannabis and it's hard to do everything. So the cannabis trail for me, more so because of you and my belief in who you are as a person and your intentions and your values, I've supported from the very beginning, and I feel very honored to be the first person on the cannabis trail. So I can tell the story of the war on drugs and what we really went through to get to this point. And that's a big part of the cannabis industry that I think people still don't know to this day. And every different icon or site on the cannabis trail has a different significance, I think, that is an important role in the cannabis industry. And so I feel very honored to be able to participate in whatever I can offer. And I know I'm doing my job when I look down the hill and I see half the people crying on the side of the hillside that I've never met before. That's when I know I'm making a difference, and that's when I know I have an impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, that human element. And to just kind of color that in, for those of you who don't know, the Cannabis Trail has about 20 landmarks, 20 to 25 by the end of this year. And each tells a story of the cultural history of cannabis and hemp for the state of California. Everything, all the different communities that are part of this story of cannabis in California. And to tie this, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you because I didn't really finish answering your question. So as I take tours here, currently every single manufacturer and every single distributor that I have are from tours that I've taken on my farm. So the tourism aspect of this industry has really enabled me to move forward and still survive. I can't sell my product for $200 or $300 a pound, but yet I've gotten this attention and built relationships with manufacturers and distributors that are spread out throughout the state of California that now help me tell that story and the significance of what we did. And so that's what's amazing. And that's how it can happen. And so I've been fortunate enough to work with you and embrace that. And it's worked out really well for our farm. And
yeah, well, let's dig into that. I mean, you are a man of firsts, and you do it, and you do it very well. And you have this gummy that I am ecstatic about because it makes it accessible. A lot of people don't smoke and travel, right? It's a sensitive topic with hotels and destinations. But you've been partnered with iPoppy, and you guys have been crushing with a single cultivar gummy that is a full expression of, it's a new kind of product, in my opinion, that exemplifies travel and tourism because it ties in that product to place, specifically a farm and a cultivar that is a signature of that place. Can you please share a little bit about that journey with iPoppy and what's been exciting about that?
Yeah, and it's amazing because Justin, who is the COO or the co-founder of iPoppy, really came here on a tour, right? So that's how that relationship actually began. And he was already enamored by Whitethorn Rose, I think the flower, and really was already in the beginning stages of creating a brand. And, that tour that we gave him that day really had a huge impact on him. And he was like a kid in the candy store. He came in the right time where everything was flowering and it was looking its best, right? Every farm looks best during certain times of the year. And he happened to nail it, and really fell in love with Whitethorn Rose, and really wanted to work with not only me, but Rose and what we were doing here, and wanted to tell the story. So the one special thing about iPoppy and Huckleberry Hill, and now that's also incorporating other small farmers in the region, is that our values are pretty aligned, right? The mission is kind of really similar. They're not trying to capture all the attention and take advantage of what we're doing. They're trying to help us and really tell our story. And that Whitethorn Rose gummy that you speak of is really a reflection of the taste of the place. And it's one, if not only one of the gummies that I know of that there's no flavor added. It tastes exactly like the plant, which tastes exactly like the place. And it's pretty incredible. And I don't like my head to get too big when we're talking about Whitethorn Rose. It's gotten a lot of momentum. I'm praying to God that I don't mess it up, whatever that means. And I'm really looking for some advice with My Green Network and iPoppy to kind of trailblaze this and steer me in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, I just want to be on the hill, and I want to be farming and taking care of the plants, because that's really, at the end of the day, the most important thing to us.
Yeah. Well, that's that. I mean, from a tourism landscape, it's like, I live in down in the Coachella Valley, and Palm Springs has so many tourists, and there's a lounge right in the center of Palm Springs. And just last week, I was talking to the guy, about bringing my Ganjier certification forward, and what does that look like? And guess what gummy makes the most sense, and what flower makes the most sense? One that has an authentic tie-in to a brand like Humboldt and a farmer like you, with that value and the craft and the love of the plant, and having it expressed in that edible form, as well as the flower and hash. And so tell us a little bit about what are the different products that Whitethorn Rose is being alchemized into to reach travelers, consumers, visitors.
I don't even know if I know all the different ones that iPoppy's experiment around and develop. They surprise me once in a while, but there's definitely, so basically this is how it works. So iPoppy, we don't have a contract. It's more of a handshake. It's like an agreement. It's a good old boy agreement, and they know my word is my bond, and I'm going to honor it. So it seems to work. It has worked until this point. I guess it works until it doesn't. But so they basically have simplified my life. Instead of dealing with a dozen different manufacturers or distributors, they said, you know what? We love your product. We'll take all your product, and we want Dylan from Atoll Valley Sungrown, and Galen from Whitethorn Valley Farm, and another friend of mine to grow your strains that we've resonated with. And they decided they were going to build their whole company on a story and these legacy genetics out of the Emerald Triangle. And so they're always doing R&D back at My Green Network, and they've created, so they take all of our product. Last year, I think they ordered 10,000 pounds of fresh frozen, which sounds like a tremendous amount. And I guess in the big picture, it is, but it's wet. And so it's not really as much as it sounds like. But so they take that and they do all the book work. They do all the sales. They pick and they choose different manufacturers or distributors that maybe want a house brand, or maybe want to run Whitethorn Rose in the way they like to create different products. And so they distribute it throughout the industry, whatever they don't use. iPoppy specifically tends to use all the product that is grown off my farm in particular into their brand of iPoppy. And so they've simplified it. They have allowed me to have more time to grow the weed. And they came up with this amazing gummy. They have Whitethorn Rose gummies. They have Riddle gummies. They're going to produce a Fruit Loops or a Paradise Rose gummy. They did some taffy. They're coming out with, oh God, they told me I can't say it really, but by the time this comes out, we'll sneak it in there. They're coming out with a new Whitethorn Rose hard candy, like, you know, those little watermelon candies that you can suck on and taste the flavor for a while. So we'll keep that kind of hush hush for a minute. But and then they have all these different hash products, whether or not it's ice water hash or bubble hash or rosin, and I'm scared to talk about all those things because I don't know the lingo. I haven't spent the time to really truly understand it, but I know they have these rosin pens. 710 Tim, his name is Tim, works for My Green Network. He is also a chef. And so he gets very creative in the kitchen and he does amazing works. And just talking to him, our values align, and he just takes so much pride in what he does that he won't stop until that product really tastes like he wants it to taste like.
Right.
And he's created some amazing things. I wonder if I'm forgetting anything, but you know, and then also I grow a certain amount of flour, dried flour every year for those people that like it. And I put that in my own jar and distribute that through Redwood Roots. It makes it to some shops. He's a very small, no investment distributor that has the ability to maybe have 20 or 30 shops that pay him, right? You know, you have to kind of weed through those ones that pay and don't pay. And the industry is not just black and white. It's really hard to navigate. And when a retailer doesn't pay my distributor can't pay us. And, you know, it makes it hard to participate the next year. And so, you know, with My Green Network and iPoppy, they've really simplified that and been very honorable about making timely payments and making sure that the farmers were taken care of.
Yeah. And you've mentioned it multiple times, can't agree more, especially in this industry, is having a value aligned partners you can do good work with and have a similar vision of, you know, what quality of life means and what a respectful relationship means. And as the lounges come alive in California, you know, I work with a lot of these destinations where I see all these lounges throughout the state, and all I see is experience centers. And, you know, iPoppy and Huckleberry Hill and Whitethorn Rose, and the concept of lounge programs kind of coming to life in really key markets where it's experiential marketing. You know, you have a, you know, maybe you have a tasting with a Huckleberry Hill, iPoppy, Whitethorn Rose, whether it's a gummy flight or a hash or some weed or a pre-roll. Coupled with an audio podcast and cultural content and connecting you to the farmer and the farm and all of it. What do you see when you see where California is now with lounges, cafes getting green lighted? What does that mean for the cannabis experience economy in the state evolving to this next level of something that's the California version of the coffee shops of Amsterdam? And do you view those as platforms to do marketing and reach customers? And has that been a conversation with you and iPoppy at all?
Yeah, you know, of course they want me to go to as many events that they attend as I can. And, you know, I feel really awful sometimes because those retail shops that really support us and carry our sun-grown product on their shelves, you know, they want the farmers to go there. And, you know, just to point out a few farmers that do an amazing job with that is like Soul Spirit Farm, Judy, Moonmaid Farms, you know, Emerald Spirit Botanical, Joseph. Like those guys are on it, and they're giving those retail shops and that consumer experience like no other farmers that I know. And, you know, even Arcana Flowers, they do a great job. And I probably left out some, but just because of the individual situations with the farmers, like Rose and I are the only two that are here on the farm, and we got a vegetable garden, and, you know, we got fruit trees, and we got the cannabis to take care of. It's just us two. So I've explained to them all enough and maybe shed some of my guilt already about not being there more. There's one tour that I go to. Well, I go to the state fair. The state fair, I think, did an amazing job. I was really, really happy with what they did this year. I try to attend the Emerald Cup. Not sure if that's going to happen this year or not, but those were a couple of events that I went to. And then every year I go to Seven Stars in Oakland. Z is a special human being. He reminds me a lot of you, actually, just by by your values and just by your personalities and stuff. And he really cares about his customers a lot. And I've resonated with him and developed a really good relationship. So every year on 420, I go to Z Shop. Rose and I pack up the farm and we go down there and we give away seeds and genetics. And maybe this is one of the questions we're going to talk about, but growing your own magic, I think, is the most important thing for a consumer. And but yeah, so I get off the farm very rarely. I'll attend a few more events with iPoppy, and I am actually, Rose and I, they've been asking us for years now to go down there. We're going to fly down there next week and go see their facility and see how it all gets processed down there. So
yeah, and as you fly down there, know that in Santa Ana, they're having by appointment tours of My Green Network, and and tying this into the Emerald Triangle and Huckleberry Hill and Whitethorn Rose. I think all the puzzle pieces are there, depending on the bandwidth and resources. I see it shaping up though to be a possibility. So and Santa Ana has been an amazing destination. Travel Santa Ana is all about promoting cannabis tourism. It is on their website. They are there to support the cause. So know that you have an ally in that destination to put a megaphone behind it.
I think what's really important to recognize here too is that my farm grows 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4 different cultivars that were where I used to grow with my mom a long time. They were all developed here. I limit it to those that nobody else in the world has. And what iPoppy and My Green Network has done is really they have focused on those just few cultivars. They do have a lot of other cultivars too, but they've really built a whole business behind 1 or 2 or 3 main strains and really have generated a lot of income through those. And just on the phone call today with HCGA, which is Humboldt County Growers Alliance, really talking to the farmers, since a lot of them might be going away, but their business model is more trying to say they got the best, right? And everybody's saying that. But why not highlight those things that make Humboldt County special, like our legacy genetics? Everybody has old seeds sitting around, and it's really about marketing and branding and sharing that experience with those people that are up here visiting the area.
Yeah. And I tend to lean into diverse. Like I like trying different strains from different farms. And it's like, we go to the gym and lift the same thing every time. No, like keep exercising,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, tell us a little bit about, you said grow your own magic. I mean, again, this is agritourism, right? And the cannabis, and as you go into this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the California cannabis appellations that are going to start being established by the California Department of Food and Ag. And that is absolutely hand in hand with cannabis, just like wine AVAs are with the wine industry and the grapes. So talk about that cultivation side of growing your own and what your thoughts are on the appellations coming into play.
Yeah, I guess there's 2 different things here. One thing people need to understand is, like, if I were to grow Whitethorn Rose here and maybe Moon Maid on the east side of the county were to grow the same exact cut of Whitethorn Rose over there, and Ridgeline maybe a little bit closer to the river, those plants, even if we grew them exactly the same, because of the different terroirs and the different elevations and the influence from the ocean or not the ocean, really produces a different product, and the plants can look really totally different. And I try to tell people how amazing and what my experience was with growing cannabis. And it just never did it justice. But as I started to sell our genetics and share our genetics with people, a lot of times when people come on tours, whether or not it's with the Cannabis Trail, the Gangier program, or with Matt Kirsch from Humboldt Cannabis Tours, I just can't, even though I'm breaking the rules, I just can't not give something at the end of the tour, right? Whether or not it's a small bag of untrimmed cannabis, or whether or not it's seed from our farm. And people probably say, well, why can't you do that? Well, they got all these funny little rules. But in giving those seeds to people and having a certain portion of those people actually grow their own and see that excitement really brought me back to my childhood and what was exciting about growing cannabis for me. And to start a seed and to watch it sprout and to transplant it into bigger pots and to find this certain location on your property and to grow it through the next 3 or 4 or 5 months or however long it takes, and it being completely dependent on you for its survival, then watching it flower and express itself in whatever terroir you are, harvest it, cut it down, dry it, cure it, trim it, and then you share that with your friends, and you're sitting at the table and you guys have maybe indulged in a joint together, that's something that you produced, and to look over and watch them smile or them laugh uncontrollably, that's where the true magic happens. And so that's why I always want people to save their money, don't buy our product, and really grow your own magic. And that's the ultimate goal. And now for me, as our genetics have gotten out there, watching people send me pictures throughout the summer of these genetics that we've shared with them, like I get a lot of joy out of that. And I mean, most of this is through Instagram and stuff, but it's still watching that excitement brings back excitement to me. So
right,
yeah,
that's great.
And
that's great.
And just to speak a little bit on the terroir a little bit, this place is a little different. I guess every terroir is different. And, what Dylan grows over there closer to the coast in Petrolia looks a little different and is affected a little differently and is harvested at different times. And it took us really decades to find out for ourselves by making tons of mistakes on what grows the best here, right? So, Whitethorn Rose is a cross between my mother's genetic that she created with a good friend of mine. That was a Paradise Punch crossed with a Lemon OG, or a Lavender Kush. And we came up with this a strain called Fruit Loops or Paradise Punch. And then from there forward, in my mom's honor, we really created strains that were bred to that Paradise Punch plant. So every strain has a cross between that strain that I grew with her and reminds me of my mom. And that taste is very familiar to me from my childhood days. And so this terroir grows those certain cultivars differently than anywhere else. And so once we can identify the different terroirs throughout the counties or throughout the states, it'll help people understand the specialness of this certain area, just like Napa Valley is with, their certain varietal of grapes.
Yeah. Man, the love and the intention that you pour into this is incredible. And the banner flag that you carry for Southern Humboldt, and from a tourism vantage point and placemaking and being proud of the culture and community and the craft, it embodies everything that is the future of cannabis tourism in California. It really, really is. Thank you for being on the podcast. Is there other place where can people learn more about you and Huckleberry Hill Farms and maybe schedule a tour to come visit you?
Right now, the way the county is, they require us to really go through a licensed tour operator. There's really one main one in the whole county, Matt Kirsch with Humboldt Cannabis Tours. He'll have a schedule and dates, and don't get mad at him because we do kind of limit him to certain times and certain dates because, like I said, it's Rose and I that are the ones, growing the plant, and we give them priority. We also, you can find us at pickhumboldt.com. We have a website that Rose keeps updated whenever she has time, and there's videos and stories, and it'll give you a good idea on when you and I are both talking about something that looks a little different than an indoor grow or a commercial row cropped facility. It's different. I suggest you go check that out. And then my main thing, you can always catch me about 4:30 in the morning on Instagram. That's Huckleberry Hill Farms _WTR. My other account got taken down, so we just started a new one, and we keep going. But I just really want you to know, and the Beard Bros, are doing some amazing work, and together, I think we have a lot in common. But what we all really truly have in common is we're making a difference. And sometimes a person is very unsure. I should speak for myself. Very unsure going forward if what we're doing is the right thing, but it's definitely coming from the right place. It's coming from my heart, and I'll make mistakes as we go, but it's really about the consumer. It's about the small farmer, and it's about an amazing community that I grew up in.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate you being here. Travel Tuesday is brought to you by Beard Bros Media at the intersection of culture and industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth. Thank you for being with us today. We'll see you next month for another episode of Travel Tuesday. Thanks again, Johnny.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you.
You too.